My husband secretly stole $25,000 from our savings to buy a gift for his rotten sister. Now karma's crushed him, and I'm watching without helping. My husband secretly stole $225,000 from our savings for his spoiled sister's gift. Now, karma has hit hard, and I'm watching him panic helplessly.
My husband, Peter, a 33-year-old male, and I, a 30-year-old female, had been married for 3 years.
Before that, we were together for 3 years too. I've known his family for almost 6 years, and I've gotten along with most of them, except for his sister, Lucy, a 27-year-old female. The word brat is usually reserved for younger kids who act out a lot when they don't get their way, but I think it fits Lucy perfectly. She's the youngest of 3 children and the only daughter, so I guess that's why her parents have always spoiled her. To a certain extent, her brothers have too. As an adult, her father and my brother-in-law don't treat her much differently anymore, but I can't say the same for her mother and my husband. I get along decently with my mother-in-law most of the time, and I love my husband, but the two of them are largely responsible for the spoiled way Lucy still acts. When I met Lucy for the first time, she didn't like me right off the bat because I didn't treat her differently from the rest of the family. I didn't think I should have had to anyway. Since then, she has never been nice to me and always has a very weird attitude when she's around me. The sad thing is that it doesn't even bother me because I know she's a brat and a grown woman who cannot handle not being the center of attention everywhere. I don't think I need her approval in the first place, so I've never tried to be her friend. Peter doesn't like this and has tried several times to tell me that I should at least make some effort to befriend her, but I've never paid attention to it. After we got married, he stopped trying, but he has always treated his sister like a princess. I've never had an issue with it until recently. So far, it was only his behavior through which he spoiled her by validating her all the time, even when she did something wrong, and always prioritizing her over everything else. Occasionally, he would splurge a little on her, but it was a reasonable amount, and he would never go overboard. However, 2 weeks ago at her birthday party, he gave her a present worth $25,000, and that's where I draw the line. It was a stunning jewelry set that she had been talking about for weeks and had told him she was saving up for. He decided to give it to her as her older brother to make her day, not even considering for a second that financially we were not in a position to be giving out such expensive gifts from luxury brands. He hadn't discussed it with me earlier, which I think he really should have because it's a huge amount. What's worse is that he had withdrawn that amount from our joint savings account. After he gave her the gift at her birthday party and everyone started going crazy over it, I had to pull him aside because I was really confused about what was going on. Earlier, we had decided we were just going to give her a normal gift, and that's what I had brought along. He explained to me that he had been assigned a big project with an extremely prestigious client at work, which meant a big fat check as an advance. He had deposited that in the joint savings account. A few days after that, Lucy started talking about the jewelry she wanted, and he just knew he had to get it for her. So, he decided to withdraw the money from the account and purchase the set for her as a birthday present. He told me that the rest of the payment for the project would come through in a couple of months, so it didn't matter that he had splurged a little right now. I thought it was strange that I hadn't received any notifications from the bank since I had alerts set up for every transaction. My husband confessed to me that the day he deposited the check at the bank, he came home and, while I was sleeping, disabled all text alerts from the bank app. He knows I don't check my email very often, so he knew he was safe, and I wouldn't find out. He said he initially did it because he wanted me to be surprised when he told me about the project. But after that, when he decided to use some of the money from the advance payment to buy the gift for Lucy, he thought it would be best if I wasn't notified by the bank, so he did not enable those alerts again. I thought this was very dishonest and disrespectful to me and had been feeling quite annoyed while he was explaining all of this. Once he was done talking, I told him that this was absolutely unacceptable behavior, and I did not appreciate the fact that he had purchased an expensive gift for his sister without consulting me first, especially since the money he withdrew was from our joint savings account. It was supposed to be for both of our futures, not just his. After marriage, when we made that account, we had decided we were not going to touch any of that money until we had a baby because it was for our future. Both of us had honored that agreement until recently. When I confronted him about all of this and told him I was not happy with his decision, he got really nasty with me. He told me I didn't have any siblings, so he didn't expect me to understand what he was doing. He also said that Lucy was really important to him, and as her older brother, he could give her as many expensive gifts as he wanted, and I had no right to stand in the way of that. I tried to argue with him, telling him we had already agreed we were going to start trying for a baby by the end of this year, so we had to save money for that. As his wife, I had every right to talk about our finances if I thought he was going overboard. But then he said something really mean, calling me a stupid and irrational housewife who was just jealous of my sister-in-law and telling me to get a job so I wouldn't waste his time and energy by creating drama about such petty stuff. Then he went back to the party and left me standing all by myself in a corner. I had to try really hard to hold back my tears while I was walking to the car and started driving back home. Once I was inside the car, I drove a little further away, and then I finally broke down. While I was crying, I called my parents and asked if they would be okay with having me stay with them for a couple of days because I just needed to get away from Peter. What he had said about me just being a housewife and needing to get a job really got under my skin because I had only been a stay-at-home wife for the past 4 months. I had to quit my previous job because I wasn't getting the kind of opportunities I wanted, and I felt like my potential was being wasted there. I had spent quite some time there and had been feeling trapped. After some discussion with Peter, I decided to quit, and at the time, he had been very supportive of it. He had told me to go for it because he said I had better employment opportunities in store for me, given my talent and dedication. I'd been looking for job opportunities that suited my taste for the past 4 months but hadn't found anything that really appealed to me, so I kept looking because I didn't want to waste my time at another dead-end job. In the meantime, I had taken over all the household chores because I didn't want to sit at home uselessly, so I guess I was a housewife. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being a housewife, but the way he said it was obviously meant to insult me. Even when I quit my job, we had decided he would still keep putting aside a share of his income for the savings account, and once I started working again, I would resume as well. But just because I told him I didn't appreciate him buying expensive gifts for Lucy, especially when we weren't even sure if we could afford them yet, he turned the entire situation around on me and made me feel terrible about things he himself had encouraged initially. The fact that he insulted me because of money made me feel terrible. After the party, I drove back home, packed some of my things, and moved in with my parents. Since then, I have been living here because he refuses to acknowledge that he did something wrong and apologize for it. He reached out to me the day after the party and told me he really wanted to make this marriage work, but he wasn't going to apologize because he didn't think he did anything wrong by giving his sister a gift. He also told me that the reason he said all those things was because he was really annoyed with me, and he knew he had taken things too far, but I had been the one provoking him on purpose, especially since I knew his family was his weakness. I didn't care, though. I told him I was going to stand my ground and that I wasn't coming back home until he apologized. Since then, we had been arguing back and forth for quite some time. 2 weeks passed, and I've been miserable, but at least my parents have been by my side. He hadn't even come to see me, we had only been talking on the phone and through texts. However, last evening, he showed up in person and told me it was an emergency and that he absolutely needed to talk to me. My parents were not exactly happy to see him, but they still allowed him to enter. We had a chat in the living room where he told me I was right about everything, and he had been a total jerk, so he had come to apologize to me for it and also to ask for my help because something happened at work. Now he needed to return all the money he had received. Apparently, his company had lost the project, and the client had made a deal with another company, so according to the contract, they had to return any advance payment they had received in full. As we all know, he had already spent $25,000 of that payment on a gift for his sister. While he was at work, his boss had told him all about it and demanded that he clear the payment by the end of the week. He was in big trouble now because, before he came to me, he had gone to his sister's house and told Lucy about the situation he was in. With a heavy heart, he had to ask her to return the gift to him, and since he still had the receipt, he could get his money back. She hadn't had any occasion to wear it yet, so it was still unused. But, in true Lucy fashion, she refused. I don't think anybody who has known her would be surprised by this because she has always been a spoiled, selfish brat, and this was exactly what I expected from her. For whatever reason, Peter was surprised, and while telling me what Lucy had said, I could see he really hadn't seen this coming, which just speaks volumes about how naive and blind he had been. Apparently, Lucy had told him she already felt very emotionally attached to the gift, and she was really sorry, but she couldn't return it to him. Even when Peter requested her to understand his situation, she started throwing a temper tantrum and told him that once he had gifted her something, he couldn't take it back. She asked him to go away after they got into an argument over this. Then he decided to call his parents. While his father was at least sympathetic with him, his mother told him outright that he had no business asking for the gift back and that Lucy was right, she was not obliged to return it to him. They told him to figure out another solution on his own and left it at that. After that, he even reached out to his younger brother out of desperation, but my brother-in-law straight up refused to get involved. When nobody from his family came to his rescue, he decided to come to me with nowhere else to go. All of a sudden, he had a conscience and felt like he needed to talk to me, which he obviously did because he had nobody else on his side right now. He told me that now he would have to dip into our savings for another $25,000 so he could clear the payment by the end of the week, or else he would be in big trouble at work and might even get fired. He couldn't afford that. Peter also said he could have easily withdrawn the money beforehand and then told me about it after it was already done, but because he wanted to be honest with me and show me how sincere he was about his apology, he had decided to approach me before he did any of that so he would have my consent since it was money that belonged to both of us. I could tell he was just grasping at straws because he didn't want to lose me, but he also didn't want to lose his money. So, he had come to me pretending as if he was really sorry about what had happened. I told him that since he had screwed up personally, the $25,000 he needed to return would have to come out of his own pockets and not from our joint savings. I also told him he hadn't been doing me a favor by coming to me and telling me about his intentions of withdrawing another huge sum of money from our joint account just so he could cover up his own mistakes. I would have found out about it eventually because this time the bank would definitely notify me since I had enabled the alerts again, and I wasn't staying with him, so he couldn't disable them without my knowledge. The only reason he was even apologizing to me now was because he felt guilty since I had been right about everything, especially about Lucy, and since nobody from his family was on his side, he needed me to be there for him. I told him he was an extremely selfish man, and I did not have any intention of agreeing to his plan of withdrawing the money from our savings. He had to use his personal savings for it because he was the one who messed up. If he was really sorry, he would not argue with me. But he still continued to fight with me and told me he was the one who had been saving money all on his own for the past couple of months, and I hadn't been able to make a single contribution because I hadn't even been working. To make things fair, I should have agreed to his terms, but I was being unreasonable. He told me that as his wife, I should stand by him in such difficult times since he had ended up in a fight with his family and had also lost a huge project on the same day. I just reminded him of what he had said to me and how he had insulted me on purpose the other day at the party. Then I told him that if I had behaved with him in the same way and put him down like that, he wouldn't have thought twice before filing for a divorce. At least I was still trying to make it work and giving him a chance to fix things because I loved him. To defend himself, he couldn't come up with anything valid, so he just started yelling about how money isn't everything and that I should think about his feelings and his situation right now as well instead of being just as selfish as his family. I literally laughed out loud when he said that money wasn't everything because if it wasn't, then why not sacrifice his own money instead of our joint savings? He had no answer for that, so I told him that ultimately it was his call what he wanted to do since technically I couldn't stop him from using the money from our savings account. But I had made up my mind about what I wanted to do, and I was going to speak to a lawyer the next day and put an end to all of this. I was done being pushed around and made to feel bad about myself. I told him I was no longer willing to fight for our marriage anymore. When I implied I was going to speak to a lawyer and file for divorce, he completely lost it and started screaming at me, telling me I was being selfish and unreasonable. Then, from yelling at me, he went to just screaming in general about how everything was unfair and how everyone was letting him down in ways he didn't even know were possible. At that point, I felt kind of bad for him because he had lost a huge project at work that day, his family had let him down, and after that, when he came to me to feel better, I also told him I wasn't going to be there for him anymore. Needless to say, his day was not going very well, and he started having a breakdown in the living room. At that moment, I really didn't know what to say or do for him because, on one hand, I felt terrible, but on the other hand, I couldn't forget the insult. So, I just ended up standing there quietly for a few minutes before going to his side, patting him on the back, and telling him that everything was going to be fine eventually, but he needed to pull himself together. I tried to be as kind as possible, but in my head, I had already made up my mind that I was going to leave him, and I was firm about it. A couple of minutes later, once he was done having a breakdown, he abruptly got up and left without even saying goodbye. After he left, I called our family lawyer and explained the situation to him. He put me in touch with a divorce attorney late at night, and on the phone call itself, we decided to meet today. Within this week, we are going to file for a divorce. I was pretty sure about everything until this morning, but then I received a text from Peter saying he was sorry about everything and that he was going to pay the $25,000 out of his own pocket and not use our savings. He told me he hadn't been thinking straight last evening, and he had been a complete mess because he had lost a big project, which is why he ended up acting out like that. But he really wanted to make it work with me, and he knew I loved him, and he loved me too, so he wanted to give us one final chance and wanted me to consider it as well. Now, I am suddenly having second thoughts about getting a divorce from him because I do love him, but I know that right now, leaving him would be the best choice for me. But for him, it might lead to another breakdown, and I don't know what to do. Am I the asshole for wanting to leave my husband when he's already going through a rough patch? 4 days have passed since I posted, and I decided to go through with a divorce and told my lawyer I wanted to file the petition. It was not an easy decision to make for me because I genuinely used to think Peter was my soulmate. But in light of recent events, I don't think I can go on pretending to believe that because it's obviously not true. If it had been, he never would have said the things he said. No matter how hard I try, I just can't get it out of my head. His behavior recently has been terrible, and I'm not the kind of woman who's going to put up with this just because I love him. He needs to realize that maybe there are better people than me with bigger hearts who would be willing to forgive in such situations, but that is not me. I feel really sorry for both of us since neither of us wanted things to end this way, but it is what it is. After the message Peter sent me a few days ago, I didn't reply to it for a couple of days. But yesterday, I told him I was really sorry, but I had decided I was going to go through with a divorce because I couldn't be with him anymore. Even if I wanted to, things would never go back to the same way they were before all of this took place. Maybe it was better for both of us to try and move on because clearly, neither of us was happy with each other anymore. I told him I hoped he would understand, and then I blocked him because I didn't want to hear back from him again. This is quite difficult for me as it is, and I didn't want it to get worse. I've been miserable, but, thankfully, my parents have been very supportive, and they think I'm doing the right thing for myself. I don't know if it's the right thing for Peter, but that's his lookout now. Peter was served with the divorce papers today, almost 5 days after we filed the petition. He came over in the evening with a bunch of bags. When I opened the door to him, he told me he had packed all my stuff that I had left behind in the house and brought them to me because I would probably need them. I could tell he was very upset and had probably been crying in the car before he came here, but I didn't want to discuss it because that would just make things unnecessarily awkward and difficult. But he wanted to talk about it. While I was bringing the bags inside, he asked me how we managed to go from planning a baby a couple of weeks ago to getting divorced now. I honestly did not know how to answer that. I still tried, though, and I told him he had been quite unkind to me, and by the time he realized I was right, it was way too late for us to fix things. He tried telling me it was not too late since the divorce had only been filed and hadn't actually been finalized. We could still try couples counseling and try to make it work. But I shut it down instantly. For couples counseling to work, both of us would have to be willing to try and make it work, and I wasn't willing to do that anymore. I had kept my dignity and self-respect several times in the past, but I wasn't willing to do that anymore because, at some point, you just start feeling like a pushover and a complete doormat. Just because I loved him did not give him the right to walk all over me and not expect me to stand up against it. So, while it was really sad that we had gone from planning a family to getting a divorce in just a couple of months, I think it was for the best that we hadn't actually gotten pregnant because that would have only complicated things even more. Then, once all the bags had been brought inside, I tried to wish him the best for the future and say goodbye to him, but he had already turned around and started to leave. So, I ended up saying nothing and just shut the door after he left. I don't think he realizes this is just as difficult for me as it is for him and has only been thinking about himself, which I think is pretty selfish. It just makes me believe I'm doing the right thing by getting a divorce because if I had actually decided to have a baby with him, I'm pretty sure he would have been just as self-centered, and my personal life and mental health would have gone for a toss. I know he was trying to emotionally manipulate me into coming back by bringing up the topic of starting a family, believing that maybe that would make me reconsider everything, but it had the opposite effect. Now I'm even more determined to end this marriage as soon as possible. 2 months have passed since I filed for a divorce, and today we finally managed to get it finalized. We don't really have a waiting period here in my state, so things were wrapped up relatively quickly. I'm very grateful for all the help from my lawyers to make the mediation sessions as easy and peaceful for me as possible because I had been having a very hard time coming to terms with the divorce emotionally and was on the verge of crying every time I had to see him. As much as I want to deny it, I can't say I don't love him anymore, but ultimately that didn't matter because I think everyone knows you need more than just love to make a marriage work. I know for a fact that he loves me because he handed me a letter today and told me to read it once I got home, and I did. In the letter, he basically apologized for everything he had put me through and told me I deserved way better. He was too late to realize it, but now that he knew, he was going to try and become a better man. Maybe in the future, if I wanted to, we could give this another shot since he can't imagine his life with anybody else apart from me. He told me he would love to be friends and at least be a part of my life in any capacity he could because he didn't want to completely lose me. But he would understand if I was not open to it right now. He just wanted me to keep an open mind and think about it for the future. I guess I will do that, but right now, I need my space, and I need to be away from him to move on and heal. I'm hopeful that maybe sometime in the future, when circumstances are better and he's a changed man, we might be able to make it work. But for now, I just want to focus on my new business and be free for a while. All our assets and money have been divided, and I'm pretty sad, but I'm trying to cope with it. I'm taking one day at a time, as most people have advised me to do, and I don't know how things are going to turn out in the future, but I know that right now, I have done what was best for me, and I'm going to try and not have any regrets. I'm going to start this new chapter of my life by channeling all my energy into my business, which I started because I hadn't been able to find anything I liked in the job market, so I created a job for myself. Fingers crossed, life will go well now.